It was 2 in the morning when Marcus heard the dripping. Not rain. Not a leak from outside. This was happening on the inside of his own living room wall, sliding down the curved steel panel in slow, deliberate streaks, pooling on the baseboard he had installed 3 months earlier. He pressed his palm flat against the metal and felt it. Cold, wet, almost sweating, like the wall itself was running a fever in reverse. He'd spent $40,000 turning a bare Quonset shell into what he thought was a finished home. New insulation, new HVAC, a space heater running in the corner just to keep the chill off his hands. And still, at 2 in the morning, in the dead of a Montana winter, his walls were crying, and he stood there in socked feet, staring at a puddle that shouldn't exist, wondering if he'd just made the most expensive mistake of his life. Here's the question that should concern anyone living inside a curved metal structure in a place where the temperature swings 60, 70, even 90 degrees between January and July. Why does a home engineered to survive artillery fire, because that's what these arches were originally built for, struggle to survive a Tuesday night in February? The answer isn't what most people assume. And that's exactly why so many Quonset conversions fail in their first extreme winter, no matter how much money went into them. Most homeowners think the fix is simple. More insulation, thicker walls, higher R value. Throw enough foam at the problem and it goes away. But Marcus had good insulation. 6 inches of closed-cell spray foam, professionally installed, are 38 by the numbers. Therefore, on paper, his home should have been bulletproof. But paper doesn't account for geometry. And geometry is where curved steel homes quietly betray the people who trust them. Here's the detail almost nobody explains before you sign the contract. A Quonset arch isn't a wall. It's a continuous, unbroken thermal bridge, curling from footing to footing, made of solid steel, one of the most conductive materials you could possibly build a house from. Every rib, every purlin, every seam in that arch is a highway for heat to escape in winter and pour in during summer, no matter what you spray onto the inside surface. Insulation slows conduction through the field of the panel. It does almost nothing for the ribs themselves unless it's applied in a very specific sequence, at a very specific thickness, in a very specific order relative to your vapor control layer. Get that order wrong, and you don't just lose efficiency. You manufacture condensation. You build a machine that generates water inside your own walls, all winter long, invisibly, until one night you hear it dripping. That was Marcus's mistake, not the material, the sequence. So let's actually solve this properly, layer by layer, the way it needs to be done for 2026, in climates that don't forgive small mistakes. Start with the arch itself. Before insulation ever touches that steel, you need a continuous air barrier, not just a vapor retarder, an actual air seal, because uncontrolled air leakage moves roughly 10 times more moisture into a wall assembly than diffusion through the material ever will. On new builds, this often means a fully adhered membrane applied directly to the steel before framing, furring, or foam ever goes up. On retrofits like Marcus's, it means finding every seam, every fastener penetration, every rib intersection, and treating each one like it's the spot that will eventually fail. But before we even get to the insulation, there's a spot almost every retrofit guide skips entirely, and it happens to be the exact spot where Marcus's problem was quietly getting worse. The base of the arch, where steel meets slab. This joint is where the two most different materials in the entire structure, highly conductive steel and cold, thermally massive concrete, touch directly, with nothing between them. Left untreated, this perimeter becomes a permanent cold bridge running the entire footprint of the home, chilling the lowest 2 feet of wall no matter how well the rest of the arch is insulated above it. A continuous rigid foam thermal break, run along the interior or exterior of that slab edge before final insulation goes in, closes this gap. Skip it, and you can insulate everything above perfectly and still lose the fight at the floor line, in the exact zone where your body spends the most time standing. Next comes the insulation itself, and here's where the fresh thinking actually matters. Closed-cell spray foam applied directly to curved steel is popular because it's fast and it self-adheres to irregular surfaces. But foam alone, at typical retrofit thickness, still leaves the ribs as a weak point, still leaves thermal bridging as an unsolved variable. The strategy actually proving itself in the harshest climates right now pairs a thinner foam layer against the steel, just enough to break direct condensation contact, with a continuous layer of rigid mineral wool or polyisoboard run over furring strips on the interior face. This second layer breaks the bridge completely. It decouples your living space from the conductive steel behind it. It's more labor. It's more cost up front. But it's the difference between a home that merely survives winter and one that actually forgets winter is happening outside. Now here's a detail worth holding on to for later, because it matters more than most people think. The direction moisture wants to travel through your wall changes with the seasons. In winter, warm, moist air inside your home pushes outward, toward the cold steel. In summer, especially in humid climates, that direction reverses. Outdoor moisture pushes inward, toward your air-conditioned interior. A vapor barrier designed only for winter can quietly destroy your wall assembly by July. This is why the smart approach for 2026 isn't a single fixed vapor barrier at all. It's a smart, variable permeability membrane that tightens up in winter and opens up in summer, letting the wall breathe in whichever direction it actually needs that season. Remember that detail. It comes back later. Now, the part almost nobody in this niche talks about with any real depth. Your HVAC system isn't separate from your insulation strategy. It's the other half of the same equation, and treating it as an afterthought is how a beautifully insulated envelope still ends up with a miserable, expensive interior. Extreme climates punish single-system thinking. A single central heat pump, sized for average conditions, will strain and stumble during the actual extremes. The -20 night, the 108-degree afternoon, because those are exactly the conditions it was never sized for. The approach earning real results in Quonset conversions right now is a hybrid, zoned setup. Cold climate mini-split heat pumps handling the bulk of day-to-day heating and cooling, quietly and efficiently, paired with a small, dedicated backup, often hydronic radiant floor heat, that only activates during genuine extremes, when the mini-split's efficiency curve starts to bend. Radiant floor heat deserves its own mention here, because in an arch-shaped home, it solves a problem forced air never fully will. Forced air rises. In a curved ceiling with no flat corners to trap it, warm air migrates straight up into the peak of the arch and stays there, leaving your actual living space, down at floor level, chronically undertreated. Radiant floor heat starts exactly where your body actually is. In many of these homes, it's closer to a structural necessity than a luxury feature. And then there's the piece that ties the whole system together, the piece Marcus's contractor never once mentioned: ventilation. Once you seal an envelope this tightly, and you should, you've also sealed out its ability to naturally exchange stale, moist indoor air for fresh outdoor air. Without mechanical help, that trapped humidity becomes exactly the condensation problem we started with, just relocated. A dedicated energy recovery ventilator, sized correctly for the home's volume, constantly swaps indoor and outdoor air while recovering most of the conditioning energy in the process. It's the quiet, unglamorous system that makes every other layer actually work the way it's supposed to. There's one more layer that extreme climate Quonset homes need that milder climates can often skip entirely: dedicated humidity control, separate from your heating and cooling. A mini-split will drop temperature efficiently, but it isn't designed to hold a precise humidity target, and in a tightly sealed metal shell, humidity is the variable that decides whether your walls stay dry or start sweating again. In cold, dry winter climates, that often means a whole home humidifier calibrated conservatively, because oversaturating the indoor air in a tight steel envelope is how you recreate Marcus's exact problem from a different direction. In hot, humid summer climates, it means a standalone dehumidifier size to handle the latent moisture load your air conditioner alone won't fully remove, especially on overcast, muggy days when the compressor barely runs long enough to pull humidity down. Get this layer right, and the temperature swings stop being the only thing you're managing. The invisible moisture swinging alongside them finally comes under control too. Remember that seasonal moisture direction from earlier? Here's why it mattered. Marcus's dripping wall wasn't strictly a summer problem or a winter problem. It was a mismatched vapor barrier made worse by a static system fighting a moving target. Once his retrofit crew corrected the sequence, air seal first, dual-layer insulation to break the thermal bridge, a seasonally smart vapor control layer, zone mini-splits, and a properly sized ERV, the dripping didn't slow down. It stopped completely, in one season, without touching a single stud. Before we finish, one more thing worth saying honestly. If you've watched other videos in this space and dismissed them the moment you noticed AI-generated visuals, it's worth asking what you were actually reacting to. Somewhere behind every one of these videos is a person who spent real hours pulling together building science research, checking claims, trying to hand you something genuinely useful, and the pictures on screen are the least important part of that effort. The value was never in the image. It was always in whether the information could keep your walls dry at 2 in the morning in February. That's worth remembering the next time your thumb hovers over the dislike button. If there's one idea to walk away with, it's this: a Quonset home isn't fighting you. It's simply telling you, in the most literal language a building knows how to use, exactly where your system has a gap. Every drip, every cold spot, every stuffy afternoon is data. In 2026, with the materials and equipment now available, there's no climate extreme enough to leave that data unanswered. Only sequences that haven't been corrected yet. Marcus's home stayed silent through the following winter. No dripping, no 2 a.m. wake-ups. Just steel, quietly doing exactly what steel was always capable of doing, once someone finally listened to what it was trying to say.